And even my husband has pointed out a few times how, I used to mention to him, like every time I'd get a new client call or every time somebody would leave therapy, because it would bring up all my panic. And I think a couple months ago, he shared with me like, yeah, you never talk about that anymore.
This is Therapist Clubhouse, a podcast for private practice entrepreneurs. I'm Annie Schusler. This week, I'm talking to Ivy Griffin, a private practice entrepreneur in Sacramento, California. Ivy's niche is highly sensitive people, and she identifies as highly sensitive herself. And so do I, by the way. Listen as she dives into her entrepreneurial journey. Welcome, Ivy. Welcome to Therapist Clubhouse.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
So I want to talk to you about your entrepreneurial journey. And I want to start with your niche. You have a wonderful niche. So will you describe that for us?
Sure. So I specialize in working with highly sensitive people, particularly women who are professionals in their 20s and 30s, often highly sensitive teens as well. And I really kind of got to that niche over time as I realized that a lot of the clients who I had coming into my practice were highly sensitive. I had read the book a few years ago myself and really resonated and found myself just connecting with all those ideas. And then it was really fun to realize, oh, wait, okay, so I naturally draw these people in to work with as clients. So why not really make that a focus? And it's been really interesting to see how people connect with that too.
One thing that I really love about the way that you've done that is identifying yourself as a highly sensitive therapist. Mm-hmm. What was that like to embrace?
Oh, it was scary.
Yeah.
It was like a whole new world. I feel like when I first started, both as a therapist and then later in private practice, I very much had this idea of like I wasn't supposed to share too much of myself. Mm-hmm. I think I tend to be pretty relational generally, and that definitely comes up in my work. But I always kind of was holding back and felt like, I can't share too many details because that's just, not appropriate or not what we do as therapists. So it was definitely really like scary and uncomfortable to kind of share that and disclose that. And I had some fear about like, what are people going to say? Are they going to think that, I'm not capable of being a good therapist because I have this quality, or that it impacts my work? But I've really kind of found the opposite. Like people appreciate that a lot. And I've had clients contact me just because that I've shared that I'm highly sensitive, and they want to work with somebody who really knows what it's like and knows, the day-to-day experience of it. So I think it's kind of opened up a lot of new opportunities.
Yeah, that is such a beautiful example of where calling yourself a highly sensitive therapist, it changes your marketing, of course. It becomes something that you're known for and something that you can put out there, and it draws people. But it also, I'm imagining, kind of changes the clinical experience in that people know right away they can maybe go a little bit deeper, a little faster, not having to check out, like, is she going to understand this highly sensitive thing? Or is she going to judge me like other people have judged me?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And, it comes up in other ways too. Like I've been working over the last year to start to really build my blog audience on my Tips from a Highly Sensitive Therapist blog. And I've actually had a couple of folks even reach out and contact me via email, not clients, but just people saying, oh, thank you for writing this. I really connected with it. It's so nice to know I'm not the only one who feels this way and I'm not alone. And so that's just really rewarding, right? To know that there's so many different ways to help people feel not alone. But yeah, it absolutely, I think, helps with therapy too. Mm-hmm. I think it just kind of helps us start at another place when clients come in and they know, okay, you get this. I don't have to explain it. And then I think it maybe adds more credibility on my end when we start to work on how it doesn't have to be a weakness. I find so often when highly sensitive clients come to therapy, they feel like there's something wrong with them and that they just want to get over things and they want to be more like other people, and they feel like so worn down from just life and the world in general. And so I think it does kind of help them trust me a little more as we start to work on shifting those beliefs and helping them understand that they really do have strengths, and that can be a huge part of who they are instead of focusing on the difficulties.
I mean, this really makes me think of superpowers because, that's something I love to think about and talk about is identifying what your superpowers are as a therapist and then using that to build your business around it. And you've really done that. You've really embraced being highly sensitive as a kind of superpower that has been seen as a weakness, just like happens for the superheroes in comic books, right? Like these things are seen as weaknesses until they're used for good or they're used powerfully. And so you've held out these words like, I'm a highly sensitive therapist. And that's actually drawn people to you and it's helped them feel comfortable with that power in themselves. Because I'm highly sensitive too. I'm thinking there are hard things about it. Mm-hmm. And there are these intense strengths about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love your comparison to the superheroes. Like, yes, I want us to be like superheroes. That's fantastic. Yes. Yeah, but absolutely. And I really kind of embrace that being highly sensitive is like two sides of the same coin, right? There are those things that are really challenging and that are going to be hard. And the more we can like learn to work with that and understand that and that's part of our process, the more I think we can embrace the strengths and how it helps us be the people that we want to be and live the lives we want to live.
Well, for you in your business, what have you had to be sure to set up in order to honor being highly sensitive? Like, are there certain kinds of things you've had to do with your schedule or anything else that comes to mind around that?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it has very much been a learning process because when I first started, I think I had much more the mentality of, okay, I have to get all the clients I can and I have to fit them in my schedule whenever they can come, because I just need to build a caseload. So I didn't really respect being highly sensitive at the beginning. And it definitely took a toll. Like over the years, I think I got to the point where I was feeling really exhausted and burned out even because I was seeing too many clients and I wasn't giving myself breaks during the day. So a lot of what I try to do now, and I will say it's always a work in progress because I find I kind of tend to be a flexible person. And so sometimes, I catch myself not sticking to these things. So I kind of have to rein myself back in. But I really try not to schedule more than 5 or 6 clients in a day total, which I know can be pretty average. In the past, I was really bad about scheduling 7 or 8 and just completely exhausting myself. And I try not to schedule any more than 3 clients back to back. Any more than that, it's just kind of too much and it's like overwhelming and I need some decompression time. And then another thing I do is I tend to kind of take daily walks when I'm seeing clients. I like to get out midday and just go for a walk and get some fresh air. I often actually listen to your podcast or, others. Yes, it's like a fun, positive part of my day. But I get out, get some fresh air, listen to a podcast, and just kind of decompress a little bit, and that helps. And then I find for myself too, just really trying to stick with like a regular exercise plan helps manage the stress overall too. But for me, it's been a lot about like how I structure my day and making sure that I have adequate breaks and that I have time in between. And also really for me, it's been branching out into doing other things beyond just seeing clients. Like I love the clients I work with, but I realized early on that I didn't just want to have a private practice where I saw clients all day. I think the like 20 to 25 clients a week for me is just kind of too much. And so as part of that, I've started supervising a couple of interns who work with me now, and they're fabulous. And I found that I really love that work. And it energizes me a lot and can kind of take a lot less of the emotional drain that sometimes working with clients takes.
Beautiful. And like you're able to help so many more people that way too. If we think about all of the clients that your interns are seeing.
And it's just really kind of tapped into a part of my curiosity and what I love about therapy too. I love hearing people's stories, kind of stepping into like where they are in this chapter in their lives, and then being able to strategize and brainstorm just really exhilarates me. So it's been a great balance because I get to help more people. And then it also is just something that really energizes me.
And then do you have any other services in your practice right now?
Yeah, well, so both of my interns this summer are offering teen groups, and that's something that I've been helping them put together quite a bit. One is a general teen support group for girls age 15 to 17. And then the other is a teen group for boys who are socially awkward, kind of in that preteen range. And it's going to focus on social skills and then alternate with like outdoor kind of adventure based activities.
Oh my God, that is so sweet. I would love to be a fly on the wall for seeing what happens in those kinds of groups. That's amazing.
Yeah, and I found too that it also really is exciting to me to help them like find their passions, right?
Yes.
And what services they want to offer and be able to support them.
Well, and yeah, and I guess that's interesting because what it brought out in me was like, oh, I want to see what happens in those groups. And you do kind of get to do that. Like you get to really hear and help them craft these things and you get to be really on the inside of these things.
Yeah, no, it's true. And it's so funny you say fly on the wall because I kind of always feel like that. Like I'm so curious about things. I want to know what it's like on the inside. So I think this does kind of serve that almost voyeuristic
Yes.
urge to I get to know what's going on. And it's totally appropriate and helpful.
Yes. You get to use your power for good.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of people are afraid of bringing in interns. We actually have a listener question coming up later about this, but what have you found for you are the difficulties and the pros to bringing in interns?
Yeah, well, definitely a huge difficulty at the beginning was figuring out like where the hell to start. Like there's so
Yeah.
many, there are just so many facets you have to think about of being an employer and what does that mean and how do you handle payroll and what are your obligations, and I had to set up workers' comp insurance, and all those details felt very overwhelming at the beginning. But I know you had suggested some great resources to me that I was able to connect with and get some more information. And I just kind of had to take it step by step at the beginning, working through all of that and figuring out like what my systems were going to be. So that was definitely a huge challenge in hiring interns. I think I don't know if I would call this a challenge, but just the other thing that I was really aware of was wanting to hire wanting to be selective about who I hired. I wanted to be somebody that I felt comfortable with and that we were going to be a good fit to work together. And also someone who I thought, kind of had the passion and the drive to do private practice, because I definitely think it's not for the faint of heart. There are a lot of ups and downs. And so I was really honest with people about that on the front end and wanted to make sure that like their needs, including their financial needs, were going to be a fit, for how we could work together. I think the rewards have just been immense, though. I've always enjoyed teaching, and like earlier in life, I thought maybe I wanted to be a teacher. And so getting to work with interns is a really nice aspect of teaching, and also just the collaboration that comes with it. And it challenges me too. Like I have to make sure I'm really up to date on all my law and ethics. And, sometimes questions come up that I'm like, oh God, I don't know. I haven't thought about that. Let's look into it, or let's call camp, or whatever we need to do. But I think it kind of keeps me on my game, which is both a challenge, but also really rewarding. And I think it kind of keeps me more focused than I might be if I was just working alone.
Yeah, I have found, I'm not a supervisor right now, but when I have been a supervisor, I've found it was really good to get all this practice talking about the way that I work and practice talking about, well, why do we do this instead of that? Why do we look out for these issues? Because it can become like after a number of years, even if you're becoming a better and better therapist, we can sort of lose track of that ability to explain our work and be able to talk about it. And I think that's an important skill.
Absolutely. It's so interesting. It makes me think of the supervisor training I did recently, where they talked about like the 4 categories of knowledge. And like the beginning one was like, you don't know what you don't know.
Yes.
And then like the upper one was, you know things so well that they're unconscious. Right. And so sometimes the challenge is to make the unconscious conscious and to be able to talk about it and explain it. So yeah, absolutely. I think supervising draws on all of that. So that's been just really fun. The second intern I hired, I actually wasn't even advertising or looking to hire anyone, but because I had hired my first intern, a colleague that I had worked with previously knew that I was supervising, and then had this friend who was looking for a private practice internship and ended up connecting us. And at the time, I wasn't sure that I had the office space or the availability, but I met with her and we just connected, and I was like, okay, I want to work with you. So we kind of started talking about how to make it work. So that was a fun piece too. It didn't kind of take all the front end work of let's advertise, let's try to find someone. She just kind of came to me, and that was really nice too.
What do you charge and what do your interns charge?
So my fee is $120 per 50-minute session. My interns offer reduced fees that range between $50 to $80 per session. And we have a sliding scale that we've created based on finances and just financial need for folks. And so they kind of share their monthly income with my interns, and then they discuss as part of that intake call where they fall on the scale and what would be affordable for them.
Mm-hmm. And what's that been like helping them through that process of charging fees?
So familiar. I feel like everything that came up for them are issues that I worked through and, still come up for me sometimes. Money's hard. And, particularly when you come out of school, we're not trained in that. Also, our profession is kind of weird, right? We're like these very connected, caring people, but then we're taking money for that. And sometimes that creates like a funny feeling or a strange dynamic. But yeah, so helping them collect fees, it just brought up everything that I had felt myself of like, I remember the first client I saw who paid me and feeling like I should just give them the check back, right? Like, I don't know what I'm doing. You can't give me money. This is not okay. I did it, but I remember that feeling very clearly. And so I've worked with both of them on that. And also just kind of starting to be aware of like different struggles that come up for them around money. Like I know one of my interns has really struggled with charging people for late cancellations. Right? And that it's really kind of brought up some personal experiences for her. And so we've worked through those. And I think as a supervisor, it helps me because I so get it. Like
Yes.
I have had that very same struggle, and, trying to figure out how to explain it to people while still being therapeutic and supportive and kind. It's a lot to navigate. And I think also in our culture, because we just don't talk about money very much, it adds this kind of layer of mystique to it, or just really discomfort. So yeah, it's been a lot of working with them to help them navigate that and kind of know, I want to help them find their own comfort around it too.
And I'm betting that you have a big part of that is you being a role model. That I wonder if that even pushes you further to getting more comfortable with money, to kind of letting go of those old beliefs about money. Does that feel true to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I've had my own struggle with money, and then I'm working to help them. But then it's also been kind of both scary and fascinating how my working with them sometimes brings up my own fears, and I find myself back in that place of like, oh yeah, it is really hard to charge, but you can do it. And I think it does help that I have the experience and that I can talk through situations that I've been in with clients, and share with them, yeah, I had this happen and here's what I said and here's how I handled it, to offer that modeling and just to let them know that they're not alone, right? And that these are issues that we all kind of deal with as therapists and have to find our footing in.
Yes. How do you have it set up in terms of, are they paying you for supervision or are you doing a split? And the reason I'm asking that is I'm thinking there's money between you and your interns. And so it's like not just talking about money between intern and client, but then also like modeling the whole money exchange and being in business with them. What's the kind of structure that you've used financially?
Sure. So we do a percentage split, which I do think has been helpful, both because it mirrors more of what a private practice is really like, right? And you're going to make money based on how much earnings you bring in.
Yeah.
And I do think that that's helped them really kind of understand too, what they need to do to make money and to bring in clients.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes it feel more fair to me. At the beginning, we defaulted to, if they didn't earn enough income to cover at least minimum wage for their hours worked for the month, then we just defaulted to minimum wage for that time
Mm-hmm.
period.
Mm-hmm.
But for both of them, it worked out really nicely. It was only a few months that we had to do that. And then they were both really excited and motivated, and were able to kind of get their income up more beyond the amount so that they could earn their percentage split. So
Yeah.
I think it's been a good learning experience for them too. And I think it's kind of helped paint a realistic picture of what business is like. And also, what you can do to affect your income by networking with people and marketing. And more, I've been working with them on, even going online and doing some social media marketing. And they seem to enjoy learning about it. And I think that also just kind of helps feed into the, like, I can be in control of how much I earn and what my income is per month. So let me take action to affect change with that. Does that make sense?
It makes so much sense. They're so lucky to be working with you and to get that kind of training along with the clinical training. I mean, I'm sure you're lucky too. They sound awesome, but that's, I think that's something as supervisors that a lot of therapists haven't figured out yet, is like how to guide their interns through the whole entrepreneurial process.
Yeah. Well, and I try to be like really transparent about it too, right? Like I put a lot of thought going into that. I wanted to try to make this as fair to both of us as possible. One of my pet peeves is how I feel like sometimes interns are really mistreated or underpaid or expected to work for free. And I'm like, no, we are professionals. You should not have to do that. So I just try to be really open about it. Right. And if they ever have questions about things, I invite them to ask me. We can talk about if they think that something might be more fair or equitable, but I don't know that that's really come up at all. But I even invite them to ask, if they have questions like, hey, can I go buy this supply for my group and have you reimburse me? I'm pretty open to that too, because I just want to support them in their process. And I want us all to make a decent living, right? This is work. We need to be able to support ourselves and live good lives. And so I want to try to do what I can to help them with that.
It reminds me of what we were talking about earlier about what you've needed to set up for yourself. And it's been similar for me as a highly sensitive person, but also just as a person, to set up a schedule and a life that feels really good and feels like it helps maintain our energy and keep us inspired, that you're kind of teaching them that early, that they've got to be able to make a good living in order to be the best therapists that they can.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This myth of like, we're hurting people when we charge them money has got
so
to go. It's
Yes.
got to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and I think I just try to approach it too, as I want to share with them all the things that I wish I had known when I was starting, and that I kind of, stumbled and fumbled my way through at the beginning. Let's not make it so hard for them. Let's give them a good foundation so that they can go out and do the work that they want.
And when you look back over your whole entrepreneurial journey from the beginning of your private practice, have you had some particularly low or scary moments that have come up? And does a particular one come to mind?
Oh, well, yes, for sure. I've had low moments. I think kind of just two different things come to mind for me. One is, at the beginning, I was terrified. I was convinced that this was like never going to work, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I couldn't imagine how I could ever build a business around really seeing clients. And I think that came from a lot of my own history and, growing up and struggles with money. And I never went into this profession thinking I wanted to be in private practice. I approached it, I always thought I wanted to work in an agency. I tend to be really collaborative. I tend to like a lot of safety and stability. And so I thought, no, that's the place for me. That's where I want to do this. But I worked in agencies for my entire internship and got really burned out and hit this point of like, well, if this is the way to do this work, I don't know that I want to do this work. And then I had an old supervisor that I had worked with before who I talked to about it. And he was like, don't give up on this. Do private practice. Come work with me and start setting up a private practice. And so I started with 1 day a week, just
Mm.
building with clients as I could. And I had another day job that paid the bills while I was getting going. But I remember like each time I got a client call at the beginning, I was a wreck, right? I'd be like, oh, I had that total feeling of desperation, like, oh, I really need this client. And I wasn't thinking about who was going to be a good fit for me to work with. I just wanted to get some clients in the door. And each time the client wrapped up or left, I felt that panic again of like, oh, it's all going to fall apart. We're getting there. It's all coming.
Yeah.
And then I really found that just over time has helped me so much, seeing that that's not true and having like the numbers I can go back at and look at from year to year and say, okay, it's been stable, or I've grown. Okay, this is fine.
Mm-hmm.
And even my husband has pointed out a few times how, I used to mention to him, like every time I'd get a new client call or every time somebody would leave therapy, because it would bring up all my panic. And I think a couple months ago, he shared with me like, yeah, you never talk about that anymore.
Oh, it's so great.
Yeah.
It's so great.
And I just thought, yeah, I think that reflects kind of how that stability is built over time for me. But at the beginning, yeah, I was completely terrified. And then the other difficult part for me was, I think I approached private practice with this idea of, okay, let me just do what I can to get all the clients I can and build a caseload, and then it'll just run, right? Like I'll have this finish point, and then I'll just do the day to day from there. And I kind of got to that place. I had a mostly insurance-based private practice at that time, and I had plenty of clients coming in. But I realized a lot of them weren't the clients I really enjoyed working with. And I wasn't getting paid great from the insurance companies. And I was scheduling too many clients as a result.
And I think this is when we met.
Yes.
Is that right? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So you were like working too much for too little to oversimplify it. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. And so that was a really hard point too, because I felt like I'd gotten to the place that was my goal, but then realized that like I wasn't happy, and that wasn't what I wanted either. So I'd say those were kind of the two struggles I've really faced.
Yes. And that's really interesting, that second one too, of like getting what you thought you wanted and then feeling like, actually, this isn't what I want. This isn't going to continue to fulfill me. I think that can be a really hard, scary moment for people in feeling like, well, then am I entitled to want something more or want something different when this is what I asked for? Is it okay for me to, really rebuild my business in the way that I want it? Or is that too much? Like, is that just asking too much?
Yeah. And I think for me, the question a lot was like, is it possible? Right. I've worked so hard to get here, but it was more like, I don't know if I can do anything else. I don't know if it's possible. It was hard for me to picture at the beginning. And that's tricky.
Yes. Okay. So that was a huge key for you to be able to see another possibility, like see having private practice and having it be a little more easeful, or a lot more easeful.
And it's something I think I've learned about myself too. I really sometimes have trouble believing something can happen until I've done it for myself, which is a whole other challenge, because other people can tell me it's possible, but until I've gotten there on my own, sometimes it's really hard to buy into. So yeah, it's kind of trying to have some trust and faith that you can do it, which is why I think it's so great that you're doing this podcast and that so many other therapists do podcasts, because it just helps show people like what you can do and that there is no one right way and there's so many possibilities.
Yes.
I think that's amazing.
So many different ways to do it. But it's so important to know that it's okay to do it your way. Like it's okay to claim that for yourself. So speaking of that feeling of like, it's really hard to believe it until you've actually done it. What would you tell the Ivy who was just starting out in private practice?
I knew you were going to ask this. And I was trying to decide what I would say. Because my first thought is, I just want to say, like, just breathe. It's going to be okay. You're going to get there. But then I look back at that Ivy, and I'm not sure that she would have been able to believe that at all.
She'd be like, bullshit on that.
Yes, absolutely. So I think maybe what would have been more believable would be if I could tell myself, know that there's a process to this, right? And that there are going to be ups and downs. And there are going to be times that you're so excited and you just feel like you have ideas swirling around and you can't get to them fast enough. And there are going to be times where you feel really dejected and maybe even kind of hopeless in this. But that's part of it. And to not get too stuck or caught in any one of those feelings, but to just be able to know, like, okay, here's the big picture and this is the process, and just keep moving through it.
Step into the process. I love that. I remember in early low moments, I used to kind of have two, probably more than two, but at least two voices. And one would be saying, you can do this. This is possible. You may not actually see a lot of other therapists doing this, but you can do it. And, there is this entrepreneurial spirit kind of hidden inside at that point with a very quiet voice. And then there was the part of me, these other voices that were like, no, like other people are telling you, you can't make very much money in private practice. You'll burn out. All of these kind of bummer things that I was hearing. And so I think part of what I would tell me, and what I guess I'm hearing for you too, for that younger Ivy, is like, do listen to that voice that says this is possible. That voice is very wise.
Absolutely. And I would say feed that voice, give it some space to grow, and include people in your life who also support that voice.
Yes. Amen.
Yeah, right. And don't get so close to the people who don't, because there are always those naysayers out there, like, you can't do this, it's not going to work, you're never going to make any money, and don't let them determine what you do with your business.
Yeah, like maybe even try not to talk about business with them.
Yeah.
Unless you're in a position later on where you're like ready to help and feeling strong in yourself. But I think you're so right, Ivy. Like if you're too vulnerable to that stuff at a certain moment, get those people around you who support that entrepreneurial spirit. And at the time that we published this episode, registration for the Superpower Method program is going to be open. And then it's going to be closing on August 25th. So you did the program quite a while back. So can you share who you think is a good fit for this program?
Sure. So I have to say, I loved the program. I found it so helpful. And it was at that point, like we mentioned, where I was just overwhelmed and I really needed some help stepping back and looking at my big picture of what I wanted. So I think it's for someone who, in whatever place they are in private practice, who maybe wants that outside roadmap, right? Or some direction, some concrete guidance around, here are some things you can do. Here are your action steps. Because I know for me at that time, I just kind of felt like I didn't know where to start and I didn't know where to turn. And it was so helpful to have these really focused activities that built my skills and built my knowledge, but that gave me like a place to hone in instead of just being overwhelmed. So I think anyone who's kind of needing that focus would be a great fit. And I think too, it helps to like be motivated when you're ready for the program, and know that it's going to take some time, and schedule that in wherever you have to work through the homework and to do what you need to do to get the assignments done, because it really all does help fill in that whole roadmap of where you're going to go.
Yeah, you got to do the homework. It's so true. It's so true.
Right? Sometimes it's the least fun part, not yours to say, but homework in general.
Yeah, absolutely. That it doesn't, some of the mindset stuff might happen kind of through osmosis, but the building your practice, you're so right. You got to schedule it in. Whether you do my program or not, you got to schedule it in.
Yeah. I think that's been one of my biggest learning pieces. And I think you talked about this when I did your program, was about how it's not, taking a week or taking a whole bunch of hours at once and getting everything done. You really can accomplish so much by little chunks of time here and there that you stick to and that you're persistent about. And that just helped me tremendously, even if it's an hour a week or a half an hour squeezed in here. If you know what your goal is, then you can take small steps toward that in those little bits of time. And all of that's going to move you forward to the end result.
Mm-hmm. Some of the people who just finished the last round of the superpower method are committing to sticking with that amount of time that they were dedicating to the course to just keep on working on their practices during some of that time moving forward, which I just love that idea of just now that you've got it, just keep doing it.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that. That's fantastic.
So will you join me for a listener question, Ivy?
Okay, sure.
Listener question.
Okay, so I was kind of mentioning this one. So this person asks, I'm thinking of bringing an intern into my private practice. I hear it's financially risky. Is that true?
I want to say bullshit.
Okay.
Yes, I've heard a lot of that myself, and it has not been my experience. I mean, like anything in private practice, it doesn't just magically happen, but it's not financially risky at all. Yes, you're obligated as an employer to pay them for minimum wage, but if you're helping them with their marketing and helping them get set up on some directories, and you spend some time on the front end teaching them about how to network and how to get some referrals for themselves, like, no, it's not going to be risky. You're only going to help them grow and build their caseload. There are going to be ups and downs, just like anything, but they're going to be able to build a caseload just like anybody else.
Nice.
I would just say make it collaborative, right? I don't know that it's helpful, or in my experience, I haven't seen it be as helpful for those therapists who hire their intern and then say, okay, now good luck, go get your referrals, right? But I think if you approach it from a team mentality, that you want them to be successful because it's going to make you successful and vice versa, right? And so everything you can do to support each other in that, like it's not going to be bad.
I love that. I think if that's your mindset going in, I think it works. Like if you think of it as a team, if you think of it as someone who is there to help you with your business and you're there to help them bring in income. And I'm just talking about the business side with that. There's all that rich clinical stuff. But if you have a mindset around business that this is going to be mutually beneficial, then it can be. And I think if you really have a hard time with the business side yourself, like I think if you're someone, and so we don't know about this listener, but if you're someone who's feeling really like it's so hard to bring in your own clients and you just feel so blocked about that, or maybe you're really having a hard time setting your own fees or sticking to your cancellation policies, that kind of stuff, then I think there could be some risk in that you probably want to clean that stuff up and get some help, get some support to turn that around and then think about bringing in an intern.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. I know I actually did your superpower program right before I hired my first intern because I'd been wanting to hire someone for a while, but I felt like I got to get my house in order more. Like there are some things that I don't like here. And while at this point I'm still learning all the time, and like there's always so much to learn and to grow in this business, but I wanted to feel more solid in myself before I hired an intern. And I think that's very true. You know, if a person is struggling in their business, to really focus on what they can do for themselves to get stable and to know where they're going before bringing in another employee.
Excellent. I love people getting to hear from you about this.
Well, thank you. I love to share. I think too, sometimes there's like way too much secrecy in our field.
Yes.
And like, let's just put it out there and help each other and support each other and, you know, do the good work that we can do.
And so, Ivy, where can people find you and throw compliments at you?
Sure. So they can find me on my website at thrivetherapyandcounseling.com. That's all spelled out, thrivetherapyandcounseling.com.
Thank you so much, Ivy. This has been incredibly fun.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. I'm so honored that you invited me on.
Here's a simple idea to try.
Idea to try.
You know how Ivy was talking about those walks that she takes to replenish herself in the middle of her workday? Decide what it is for you that would replenish you in the middle of your workday. So maybe it's a walk for you. Maybe it's a phone call. Maybe it's meditation, or maybe it's something like a little bit more trashy, like, I don't know, even a TV show. Whatever it is, look at a way to give that to yourself so that you can take a break in the middle of the day and then come back to your clients refreshed. Thanks for listening to Therapist Clubhouse. Registration for the Superpower Method for Therapists group program is open just until August 25th. We go through a 14-week process together. You'll get clear on your right fit clients and niche, identify your superpowers and how to use them in your business, create a marketing plan based on both your superpowers and your right fit clients, and you'll figure out where your practice is going next. Lots of participants like Ivy who go through the program decide to add services beyond individual or couples therapy sessions. To learn more about the program, go to coachingwithannie.com and click on Superpower at the top of the page. If it's time to make your business awesome, unique, and profitable, this could be the program for you. We talked earlier about homework. It's true that you've got to be ready to do some work to build your practice. We have 2 calls a month, and in between those calls, you're going to be working on your homework, which will help you build your practice. You get to work with a group of 15 or less therapists. You get an individual consult with me, and then you get ongoing support after the program ends. Learn more or register at coachingwithannie.com, and you'll be able to check out our different payment plans there too. See you next week. Let me try saying that again so it's easy to edit.